Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. I just wanted to sit down and talk about some crankbait rods that I've been using recently. Now, crankbaits are something that I never really used a lot in the past. I've used square bills and smaller crankbaits, things like that, but it's not really a technique that I've, dove into in the past. It's not something I really had a lot of confidence in, so I figured I'd get my hands on some gear, and I figured what better company to start with than Dobyns, right? Because they have so many rods for so many different techniques and you can get super dialed in. So specifically I wanted to talk about the 8-foot crankbait rods. Now I got the 804, the 805, and the 806 CB graphite. Please pardon my smoke detector. That's probably going to happen a few more times. I don't know when the last time the batteries were changed, so who knows? I should probably do that. But anyway, these are the graphite rods, not the glass. I wanted to be very consistent. I think I prefer cranking with graphite based on just what I've experienced so far. But I know people love glass. It's just kind of a preference thing. So yeah, let me just dive into it. So starting off, I've got the 804 right here. And all of these rods are going to be paired with a Shimano SLX. So that's what I used all of them with, just to be consistent and to get a solid idea of what the rods themselves are like. I didn't want the reel to kind of give me a bias towards any one rod over the other. So this is the 804. It's recommended for 1/4 to 1 ounce. So that's primarily going to be your smaller crankbaits. I'm throwing a 5XD on here, which is 5/8 of an ounce. But this is rated to 1/4, so you could throw much smaller crankbaits. You can throw like DT4s, DT8s, you can throw 3XDs, basically any small crankbait up until like even really a 6XD. I'd probably throw a 6XD on this, but that's probably where it would top out, right? Your DT16s and 14s and things like that. Once you start creeping towards an ounce, that's where this starts to get a little overloaded. The 8-foot length for these crankbait rods is really nice when you're fishing big flats, big expansive rock and gravel. That's where the 8-foot length really comes in handy. Now for these smaller crankbaits, I think I prefer a shorter rod, like 7.2, 7.3, 7.6. Like I know the Dobyns 765 would probably handle a 5XD really well. With these smaller crankbaits, this longer 8-foot rod just seems a little cumbersome to me. It seems a little too long, but there are some people where that fits their fishing style and that's what they prefer. So really great rod for throwing these smaller crankbaits. Again, I think personally I would prefer something a little shorter, not to take away from the rod itself, because it does throw these smaller crankbaits really well. So next we have the 805 CB. Again, like I said, that's paired up with a Shimano SLX. Both of these have 12-pound test on them, by the way. And on there, I was throwing a tactical DD crankbait. This gets down to like 15, 18 foot. I forget the weight on this. I want to say it's either 3/4 of an ounce or 1 ounce. It might be 1 ounce, but this rod throws it perfectly. When I was getting these rods, I really thought that this was going to be my favorite, because it's right in the middle, right? It can throw the lighter stuff, it can throw the heavier stuff, but it excels at throwing these things. Like, really, I would compare this to like a 6XD, which again comes in right at 1 ounce. So this rod was bombing this tactical DD crank, and I was throwing a 6XD on it too, and it was bombing that. So that's where the 8-foot really comes in handy, because you can get some serious casting distance, and you're in the strike zone longer. Because if you cast out 75 yards, you might have 40 yards where you're actually in the strike zone. Whereas if you're using a shorter rod and you're only getting 60-yard casts, you're only in the strike zone for 30 yards, so you're increasing the amount of time you're in the strike zone by using a longer rod. Now, there are times where it can get a little cumbersome, like on my boat specifically, it won't fit 8-foot crankbait rods in the side locker. It will fit in the center locker, but that's where I keep all my tackle, so it's kind of a pain. Usually I was just transporting them on my deck, so I didn't have to deal with moving my tackle around and stuff to fit these in and out. But yeah, really great rod for your 6XDs, your DD22s, DT16s and 18s. It's rated from 3/8 to 1.5 ounces, so that makes sense, right? I was throwing an 8XD on here. It's a little overpowered, right? And I'll talk about that with the next rod, but 8XD on here, you can do it. You do lose some casting distance because you kind of have to do more of a lob cast, but it will throw it, and it does wear you out just a little bit because this is a little light for an 8XD, but it does throw it. So if you wanted to get one rod that kind of does everything, not necessarily your lighter cranks, but your mid-sized cranks to your larger cranks, this is a great rod to just kind of do a little bit of everything. Sorry about that, guys. My camera died, even though the battery was supposedly fully charged. I don't know how that works, but what was I saying? If you're looking for one rod that'll throw most of your deep diving cranks, this is kind of the most versatile, I think. Your lighter things like your 3XDs, your 5XDs, all the way up to an 8XD at the heaviest. It'll wear you out a little bit, but it'll throw it. So to cover the most ground, I recommend the 805. Now, onto the rod that kind of surprised me the most. I was expecting to enjoy the 805 the most, right? Because I'm a big fan of versatility. If I can have one rod do a wide variety of different things, I prefer to have that, right? And the 805 does, and I love the 805 for that. 804 is cool, but like I said, for smaller cranks, I want like a little bit of a shorter rod, but I can see why people would like that. Now, onto the 806, which specifically, it says on here, on the blank, it says it was made to throw 10XDs and Magnum crankbaits, right? Which it does. It was made specifically to throw 10XDs, but I think it throws the 8XD perfectly. It's literally a match made in heaven. And I'll tell you what, I had an incredible day smashing smallmouth on this exact 8XD right here. That's such a smallmouth color. You know, you think smallmouth fishing, you think little baits. Not the case at all. This is a big crankbait, and these smallmouth were crushing it. It dives around 20 foot. This bait, I believe, is 1.5 ounces, and this rod is weighted from 1/2 ounce to 2 ounces. So that makes sense, right? Because the 10XD is almost 2 ounces. I believe it's like 1.9 ounces or something like that. And that is a heavy bait. But this rod casts it really well. You don't really have to lob cast. You could really whip it out there, and that 10XD flies. It would probably throw a 6XD fine. Might be a little overpowering for that, and you might be giving up some casting distance, but it can do it. But for an 8XD and 10XD, those bigger crankbaits, this rod is perfect. Even though it's really beefy, right? For a crankbait rod, it's super beefy. It loads up really nicely. It's still soft enough to not rip these trebles out. And you could cover so much water. And this is a 7-gear ratio reel with 15-pound line, actually. I'd probably throw 12-pound in hindsight just to get it down a little further, but 12-pound with a 10XD, it could get a little dicey. I'd be a little worried about the line snapping on a cast and sending my 10XD sailing. All in all, these 8-foot Dobyns crankbait rods are awesome. And, you know, when I was looking into getting into crankbaiting, deep cranks that is, I was really confused at which one to get. So I kind of wanted to be a guinea pig, get all three, and see what each rod can do, and see what I like personally using each rod for. So, like I said, the 804, I'd probably use that for your smaller cranks. It's rated from 1/4 to 1 ounce. So basically as small of a crank as you want, besides things like wiggle warts and stuff, but I'm sure it could probably even throw those. I don't see why not. All the way up to like a 5XD, maybe a 6XD. It would probably throw a 6XD pretty decently. So it's very versatile in its own right? But I wanted to get into deep cranking because I already have like a shallow crank rod. The 805, really good at throwing everything from like a 3XD all the way up to a 6XD. It excels in that range. 8XD, a little heavy, but it will throw it. 10XD, I wouldn't really go there. 806, throws a 6XD decently. You might lose some casting distance. The 8 and 10XD is its wheelhouse. It'll bomb these baits. The action is perfect for them. Yes, with the 10XD, you'll still get worn out cranking it, but that's just a 10XD, right? They call it the man killer for a reason. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to talk about these 8-foot Dobyns crankbait rods and just do like an overview, because I know I had a lot of questions when I was looking at them, seeing which one would be right for me. So I just wanted to give you guys my opinion on them, so you are a little more knowledgeable and aware when you're going to make your purchase. So yeah, everyone, I think that's going to wrap up today's video. If you have any questions about anything I didn't specifically cover, please feel free to leave them down below. I'm always answering questions and things down there. As always, all these rods, as well as these reels, are available on AmericanLegacyFishing.com. You can also check out their used section to see if you can get them even cheaper and get a really good deal. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.